Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ventures Podcast. I'm excited about today's episode with Drew Glover. He is the co-founder of Fiat Growth and a general partner at Fiat Ventures. So it's really awesome to have someone on this show that has built a company that provides a tremendous amount of growth services for FinTech companies, because growth is everything. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. And then he and his partner have turned around and then raised a $15 million fund and have led the round Series A in companies that I know. And we just have a fascinating conversation here about the landscape of FinTech, the transition from FinTech to decentralized finance. We talk a lot about like what is Web 2.5, the blend between Web 2 and Web 3, how he thinks about this space, what he's excited about in the future, and more. So if you're listening to this episode, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com, and there I have more extensive show notes, the different things that we talk about today. And if you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures and it should show up. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Drew Glover. All right, Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So this show for venture building, venture investing, it kind of hits the niche of like market landscapes, entrepreneurial stories, the story of raising money as a venture capitalist and as a founder. We've been talking a lot about Web3, DeFi, the transition from FinTech into DeFi. So I just have 1,000 questions. I'm delighted that you're able to carve out the time. Would you mind just starting and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again for having me. Around 4.5 years ago, myself and my co-founder, Alex Harris, we founded Fiat Growth. I was at the time at a company called Steady, which helps folks in the 1099 world improve their financial health, a large financial marketplace. And then Alex was head of growth and partnerships at Chime, the large neobank from Series A to Series D. We went to college together. We've known each other for almost 20 years. We found ourselves in this interesting space where we were both building out the consumer-facing marketplaces for Chime and Steady. So we had probably around 10 to 20 companies a week at one point coming to us and saying, how can we partner with you so we can get our product inside of your marketplace and you can get our product in front of your users? So Alex and myself were chatting almost weekly, had a conversation with this company, thought it was interesting. That company didn't love it, didn't love the idea, and started looking at each other and realizing that the FinTech landscape was shifting, and no longer were folks making products for the 1% of America that had $100,000 and more in yearly income and just trying to find creative ways to manage that money better. But now they were creating products for the 99% of America that needed help the most, or even the 75% of America that doesn't even have $500 in savings in case of an emergency. So Alex and myself started really digging into those companies and started co-advising a number of them. Fast forward to today, we basically quit our jobs at that moment after having around 10 clients, founding Fiat Growth, growth consultancy, the premier growth consultancy in the FinTech space. And today we have 25 full-time employees and a fairly unique model. From day one, we basically ask for a retainer, we ask for equity in every business we work with, and we ask for the right to invest in every business we worked with. Awesome. Knowing at some point we wanted to build a venture fund where we could take advantage of that right to invest. But our consultancy today is 25 full-time employees, super picky with the people we work with, typically working with around 30 to 40 clients at any given time. Basically, we need to see them as an investable business. We think of us as a turnkey CMO where we'll work with a lot of early stage companies and say, don't hire a CMO that's going to cost you, $300,000 to $400,000 a year. Bring us in. We've seen 1,000 different FinTech funnels. We've scaled 1 million different companies up. Let us come in, build your pipes, your ecosystem, get you from 0 to 1, and then, at a future date, pass over a well-oiled engine with the keys to a growth leader that can take over what we built. So in early 2021, we founded Fiat Ventures, which is a $15 million venture fund where we almost exclusively invest in our clients that we've worked with underneath the Fiat Growth umbrella. So typically we work with the company between 3 and 12 months. When that right to invest pops up, or when their next funding round comes, we take advantage of that right to invest if we believe that company is going to be an outsized winner in the space. So quickly taking a step back, because I just said a lot, Fiat growth consultancy doubles as one of the best due diligence arms in the business because
There you
we get to
go.
work hands on with all the founders and their team and scale up, kind of wrestle in the mud with them. And then we have Fiat Ventures where we get to invest in the clients that we're most excited about.
Love the model, love the niche. Obviously, with Proda, we do something very similar where we provide a whole variety of services across a bunch of different types of work and types of markets. So I love the fintech niche here. It might be helpful to define for the audience, what do you mean? What is fintech, and what is and isn't fintech as you define it?
Fintech, the definition has expanded over the last, I'd say, decade.
Mm,
Historically, fintech is what a lot of us grew up on, which is like the old guard banking system and lending system, where it used to be a monopoly type of business where there's Bank of America, there's Wells Fargo, all these different banks basically handle hundreds of different services. You go to that bank to get lending for your home, for a student loan. What's happened over the last decade is the unbundling of all these different you know I'll call them old guard banking, where now a lot of founders, really incredible founders that used to be a part of these larger companies, and different founders that have come from different industries with a really nuanced, a unique perspective on how they believe fintech could be, have created their own kind of individual brands and products that banks used to just bundle into their own. So
mm,
now there's unique lending products. There's digital banking where these aren't banks that have a physical address, but because they don't have the overhead of having 700 physical locations, they can do all these creative things like get rid of overdraft fees and be able to give you like $100 loan without you having to pay massive amounts of interest. And this has evolved into even greater depths where now we're in this like embedded fintech craze where now someone that wants to start a digital bank can do it in 3 weeks instead of 3 years without needing 60 different developers, because there's products out there that can stand up these banks that already have all the turnkey regulatory and product needs you have to get something off the ground. So both the infrastructure of fintech and the products of fintech have really been unbundled from this historical kind of banking infrastructure. And now there's all these different innovative products that can help you solve your problems in super unique ways.
awesome. Yeah, great. That's super helpful from an education standpoint too. So basically, everything underneath all things finance, the technology that is advancing to create a better experience for those of us who need financial products. So now, okay, so that's good. How would you put decentralized finance under DeFi or under fintech, or like how do you think about decentralized finance? I think the audience might be somewhat familiar with it, but let's even talk a little bit about that. Like how are you framing that whole conversation?
So it's really delicate for us just because like a big part of our mission, both around fiat growth and fiat ventures, is really lowering the access barrier,
Hmm.
making sure that the majority of the country, both low to middle income, upper middle income, has access to a lot of the products we invest in and we work with.
Hmm.
You know, DeFi is a really interesting space because it's like right on the cusp of being like so innovative that it's still very much in this early mover space where historically the low to middle income groups of the country are just a little bit late to. And if they're trying to be involved in it, a lot of times they don't have access to the knowledge that helps them become super effective in that space. So, I know we've chatted before, and like I always talk about, where I spend the majority of my time today is this Web 2.5 space. DeFi is still very much Web 3. Bank of America is Web 1 and 1.0. But
One and change. Yeah.
yeah, I'd say I'll say like Chime, the large neobank, is very much like Web 2.
Yeah.
And now there's this like really interesting Web 2.5 space where it's the merging of Web 3 and Web 2 together. And I get so many deals in front of my desk on a weekly and a monthly basis. And when it's Web3, I think to myself, there's only a small subset of America in the world that really understands what this product is. And I still see probably a 5-year lag of everyone being able to catch up of what that is,
Yeah.
which means from an investor standpoint, the TAM, or the total addressable market of that specific product is built for a very specific subset. Yes, it might be a high income subset, but it's a very specific subset that's fairly nuanced. Where when you start talking about bringing together that 2 and 3 together, we're talking about Web3, which I call crypto native people, people that were investing in crypto in
Right.
2016, 17. And then also Web2, which are people that understand technology because they engage with it on a daily basis, want to learn more. But the leap to Web3 from Web2 is just too far right now. Examples of this, which I always throw around, is think um, think buy now, pay later for the NFT space. Buy now, pay later is very much Web 2. NFT is very much Web 3. But if there was a way for folks to purchase an NFT without having to come up with all the crypto or the cash immediately, but there was some type of payment process,
Mhm.
like that's a great example. Like everyone understands that.
Mhm.
Also, you just talk about like marketplace in general. Companies like OpenSea, NFT platform built on top of a Web 2.0 or even Web 1.0 marketplace. You know, you can go on there, you can shop like you're in a superstore, but it's for Web 3 products.
Mhm.
So we also call these the picks and shovels. This is the infrastructure of
Mhm.
Web 3 and Web 2 versus us going out and saying, hey, we're gonna just invest in like alt tokens or something like that, where it just involves a much deeper conversation.
Mhm. Mhm. So what was it like spinning up your ventures division? What raising the $15 million fund? How was that? Because a lot of budding venture capitalists listen or watch this show. What advice do you have for them? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I first and foremost, I just want to like call out, raising a fund in the traditional sense that we did is not the path everyone has to take. Right now, you talk about angel lists, you talk about syndicates, you talk about rolling funds. Like we definitely had a lot of conversations internally of how we wanted to build the future
Hmm.
of our investment arm.
Hmm.
For us, it was very clear from day one that we were looking to build a really, really a really deep, rich list of LPs. These are individuals that are both high net worth individuals, always to be also wanting to have infrastructure set up where like an institutional investor could come in and say, hey, I want to invest in your fund.
Hmm.
Where you talk about with syndicates or even rolling funds, it's not really set up for those types of investments. Those are more so investments of like individuals in your network, and as you grow your network, you can just like bring together a consortium of different folks. um, so just shout out to everyone that raises funds in non-traditional ways,
Yeah.
because I'm a big believer in it. Just
Mhm.
for us though, we wanted to, one, be investors for the rest of our lives. Two, we are raising fund one because we wanted to raise funds three, four, five, six, seven, and eight. And then three, we wanted to make sure that we had as much flexibility in terms of the type of investors that wanted to invest in us that we possibly could. The process of it was an incredible journey, a challenging one. You know, took just around 12 months to raise our fund. Also interesting to do that as you start seeing like small micro shifts and large shifts in the market while it happens, and you see how conversations change of I'm in, I'm not sure, maybe not, I'm in again. Um, and then just like backing up to the sheer like volume of conversations that you have to get to that size fund.
Yeah.
We had almost 1,000 conversations, and as we all know it, when you're in sales or in any type of kind of a relationship business, the conversation never started in like we never had our first conversation with someone that ended in money. It always started out with one conversation, an introduction would happen from there, an introduction would happen from there. Next thing you know, we're 10 or 11 conversations deep, and then we find ourselves on a call with someone that just gets it, that wants to lean in a meaningful way, that's going to be like the best, most strategic investor you could possibly have.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So let's talk. Appreciate that, by the way. It's helpful. Even. But did you get your fund raised before the market started tanking?
No, like, well, it was right there in the process.
Got it.
But it was good. It was we ended up getting like a super large institutional investor that I doubt the market shift
Got it. Yeah.
would have
Awesome.
changed their mindset, just because of I always think it's interesting. People say like, how has the market, how are you looking at the market? And I always say it's based on perspective. Like, like biggest hit in the market I've seen or had in my business world was 2008. And you start looking at some of these large institutional investors, and they're like, we've been around for 100 years. Like
Right.
we know the trends, and we know that this is a blip of a much larger pie. And when you
Yeah.
start having those conversations, it's much more around like, who are we as investors and what have we built versus what does the market look like this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So, for the entrepreneurs that are listening in, give us your take on the fintech landscape. Like, where are you? Do you have a thesis that you publish? Like, what kind of stuff are you looking to invest in? What kind of things should entrepreneurs be thinking about in the overall fintech space?
Fintech is it's such an exciting space because what we're seeing is fintech is bleeding into all these other industries on
Mm,
like a quarterly basis.
mm,
Again, because of embedded fintech, you talk about putting a buy now pay later button on every single e-commerce site. Like everything involves payments. There's many people that could argue that Shopify is one of the largest fintechs, right? It's not
mm,
just a
mhm.
place where someone can create a website and create a store. So for us right now, there is a couple of trends that we just think are like super interesting. We talked about it earlier. One is that Web 2.5 space, the bridging of web Web 2 infrastructure, Web 3 returns is kind of how I think about it. Like,
Nice.
what
Yeah.
are the companies that are built for that? Um, Another one is like the freelance economy. I'm big
Mm,
believers that the future of work is massively shifting, and it's
mm,
continuing to shift, where folks are no longer doing what their parents did, which is work at a company for 30 years and happily retiring with a house and a
right.
pension and the whole nine. Like
Right.
now it's, how can I create multiple part-time jobs to create a full-time salary? And that opens a ton of fintech opportunity. We talk about how to properly do taxes, how to properly optimize your life to make sure that you're not overspending on taxes and you're making more money and you're setting up 401k and the whole nine. I also, think that fractional ownership is a really interesting space. You talk about, a group like us that are thinking about providing access to the rest of the world. Robinhood kind of led the way with kind of making it so you could purchase fractional shares of a stock. So you could literally put $1 into Amazon and still own a piece of Amazon versus having to spend $3,000 on one share. This is shifting over into a lot of other industries. Like we just invested in a company called here.co, which does it with the short-term rental space, where they actually went and got SEC approval to basically purchase property and bring short-term rental properties public, meaning they can say, "Hey, we are bringing this property out to the market. There's 100,000 outstanding shares. You make a purchase of this property, therefore." We will provide you a monthly dividend based on the management of that property based on your ownership of the property. And you can
Okay.
invest as little as $100, as much as $20,000.
Mm,
But making it so someone is making $50,000 a year or someone that makes $1 million a year can still have access to diversifying a portfolio and
mm.
like meaningful assets that historically someone of the low socioeconomic income scale could never.
It's good. It's good. All right. So, given that you have a background in growth, specifically growth in fintech, give us an idea. The attention economy, everything. There's so much noise, right? There's so many people trying to hit us up on all the social medias and email and all the different traditional media, even experiential. Like, there's all these different funnels, right? Trying to grab our attention. How should an entrepreneur who's building a a fintech company, besides trying to become a client, besides trying to hire you and your
Yeah, of
firm,
course.
right? Like how, although in addition to that, how do you even help a team think about attention and filling up these funnels? Because this makes or breaks it, right? I mean, as we're investing in companies, their ability to acquire customers is everything, right? It's
Yeah.
everything. That attention, getting the value proposition across, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you kind of frame this conversation for people that are starting companies?
Yeah, I think there's still this idea that marketing and performance is this glorified job where it's like, great, give me a budget and we'll just go figure it out. What marketing is at the end of the day, what performance marketing is, partnership marketing, it is hiring and working with the best testers, iterators, optimizers, and people that can quickly learn from something that doesn't work and turn that into something that ultimately does work. So a lot of times, especially when we're working with early stage companies, what we're saying is if we have $1 million budget to go spend or $500,000 budget to go spend, we want to be able to test and iterate as quickly as possible in the most equitable way to
Mhm.
make it so we don't spend $250,000 of the $500,000 to figure out how to spend the other 250, but we only spend $30,000 so we can go spend that big chunk. Um, a lot of times, what happens is a lot of early stage companies say, great, we're just going to hire the most senior person possible, and then they go set half the budget on fire trying to figure out how to find product market fit.
Right.
um, a lot of times too much money is spent on getting people through the door, but not spent on how to keep people's attention once they're inside the door.
Hmm.
When you're dealing with fintech, I say it all the time, we have to deal with the most complex, highly regulated acquisition funnels imaginable.
Right.
We're like, we'll get on the phone with the e-commerce company. They're like, well, I don't think you understand our funnel. I'm like, dude, go get someone to sign up for like to change over their their school loan, or go get someone to sign up for a bank and fund the account. Like,
Right.
that's a
Right.
funnel, like, hard to deal with. So for us, it's like, yeah, like, some people want to build wait lists. Great, we can build a wait list, but at the end of the day, that's going to convert 1 to 5% of the
Sure.
people that join that wait list. So I know you want to use it to go raise around and say people are interested in us, but at the end of the day, it's like, how do we get people through the door? How do we get people to fully convert? But most importantly, how do we get them to stay?
Mhm.
Because you look at some of these neobanks right now, and people are spending somewhere between like 200 to like $1,000 a month on their platform. But if folks spent a little bit more time figuring out how to build the most beautiful, engaging ecosystem once someone enters your house, that's how you get them to like really turn into like a user that is so delighted by the happy path through the front door,
Mhm.
that once they get in the door and they start learning all the different things and all the different thoughtful ways we design that from a marketing and performance perspective, that they're going to become like long-term users that stay on for a long period of time, spend money in different ways, but it's also helping them from a financial health standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, this is straight up wisdom. I come from an academia background. When I was in grad school, my roommate had a book on his shelf called "How to Lie with Statistics." Uh, we see this all the time when doing diligence on teams, right? I mean, it's they're you. I mean, and more power to them, right? They're trying to take the data and tell the best possible story.
Totally.
But I love that you answered the growth question, thinking through the whole end-to-end journey of the user, including how to retain, because there are all kinds of tips and tricks and firms out there that will help you get the not valuable traffic, like the bursts and all the fun numbers, but the conversion rates are terrible, retention rates are terrible, and it really just doesn't matter at the end of the day. So being able to do that test end to end uh, is key. So now, but what do you say to a founder who's like, I don't know if I have the budget. How do I not hire the super expensive CMO? So I'm on a shoestring budget. How can I get the best possible end to end retention, acquisition and retention, uh, with extremely limited resources? Like, what's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, like, we're talking to companies that have raised $100 million. We're talking to companies that raised a pre-seed, $500,000.
Hmm.
In these moments, we have to reverse engineer the journey. Where I ask a founder, what's the goal here? Um,
Mm.
let's just say you have $25,000, like, literally, like, very, very small budget to spend. At the end of this $25,000 being spent, what's the best outcome?
Mm.
More often than not, a founder is going to say, I've proven enough to get to my next funding round. And if,
Mm.
if if that's the answer, then great. Let's think about what that's going to be. Because some people think, okay, great, I have this consumer financial management app that I have, and they think, I need 10,000 users to get my next round funded and get a VC to be really excited. And I was, no, you don't. You need 500 users that are living in your app.
In it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we all know, like, going to any VC when you're raising money, what you want to do is say, if I had more money and I spent it here, I could do it in the most equitable way and create an incredible product.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, listen, like, if it was 2 users, it'd be one thing, but anything over a couple hundred users, And these are users with like a multiple different personas with different backgrounds, and they're all like headed to your product like it's,
Right.
Sunday mass. Then
Right.
like at the end of the day, like you're going to be able to tell that story in a really compelling way more than if you said, hey, I have 10,000 users, and 1,000 of them are MAUs, and like some of them are spending time, some of them aren't, right? Like it's just around like what's the end goal, and then reverse engineering that so we can make sure that the story is there. Because you're right, like a lot of founders, a lot of individuals are trying to turn statistics into these weapons, but there's very easy ways to like have real statistics that tell a really sound story that make anyone really excited to back them.
So what are you excited about in the future? Like you personally in this space, in this industry, what kind of things are you looking forward to 5, 10, 15 years in the future, in terms of the vision that you see for where we're all heading here?
Yeah, one of the things that I constantly think about is how people's relationship with money is getting younger today.
Hmm.
Um, we're seeing early teenagers, even younger, like creating their own businesses. Like we're no longer in the world of, hey, like I can only do a paper route or sell lemonade in front of my house. Like if you have a computer, you can type, you can do like minimal design, like you can go on Squarespace and like kick a business off in a payment funnel easily, right? Like, and so I we invest in a company called Copper Banking. It's a bank for teens. Gives them the ability to kind of learn about money, gives them the ability to manage money, gives them the ability to earn money, and gives them a platform to do that in a super smart way. But like companies like that are understanding that 14-year-olds are going on this Nike sneakers app and then going and reselling their shoes on StockX. Like you got to pay money, you got to pay taxes on these things. Like the last thing we want is 12-year-olds like having the IRS coming after them because they didn't do stuff the right way. But I
Right.
think it's an interesting problem when I talk about this one, because I believe that right now we're just starting to see the glimmer of it being something that could be big. And I think 10 years from now, it's going to be something that's massive, where kids are going to be they're going to be earning money in really creative ways. They're going to be opening up Etsy shops. They're going to be opening up Shopify stores. They're going to be parents are going to be starting businesses with their like teen or even younger than that, because we're just catching up from an education standpoint around what's possible around entrepreneurship. Also, the barrier of entry into entrepreneurship is so low that literally a child can do it. And
Hmm.
so I think it's just super interesting to get in front of that relationship with finances as much as possible today to be prepared for the future.
It's good. It's good. And I love the shout out to Copper here, fellow here, and a good friend of mine works there, and Seattle-based company. So yeah, good, good.
Yeah, we led their Series A. We're big believers. We've been working with them for a couple years now.
Love it. Love it. All right. So if people wanted to follow up with you, find you on social media or whatever, learn more about your company, learn more about your fund, how can they do that?
Yeah, couple fairly easy ways. Easiest way is LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn all the time. It's just Drew Glover. Again, co-founder of Fiat Growth, general partner at Fiat Ventures. You can also find me on Twitter. Don't use it as much, but when I do, I do.
Yeah.
That's Drew Baylor on Twitter. And then yeah, shoot me a note on LinkedIn. I'm really on top of just following up with everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. Drew, well, this has been great. Really, really appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you in your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it would be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.